Hello. Today I'll be ranking every book that I read in this past month, as well as talk about a few books that I'm currently reading at the moment, and one or two books that I plan to read in the next month. Also, as a quick little note, I'm sorry that I didn't post anything last week. We were just very busy with school and Halloween and all that. But without further ado, let's get started. My favorite book that I read this month, finished this month. I started it 1 or 2 months ago, I think. It took me a while to get through, but it is Morgoth's Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the 10th volume out of 12 in the History of Middle-earth series. Now, the 10th volume of the History of Middle-earth has a whole bunch. These were all published posthumously after Tolkien's death, of course, and his son, Tolkien's son, Christopher, found a whole bunch of papers left behind by his father, and he went through them, edited them, and actually ended up publishing them later. And so a lot of what Tolkien wrote is actually published after his death. Really, the only things that were published in his lifetime was The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and a few others. But the History of Middle-earth series isn't exactly the history of Middle-earth as in the world, but the history of how Tolkien wrote about Middle-earth. It has earlier versions of stories like the Silmarillion and The Lord of the Rings, as well as a few stories that Tolkien actually never finished, or stories that he abandoned. But this book really delves into the history of the Silmarillion. This was after The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien had already written a lot of what would later become the Silmarillion before he wrote Lord of the Rings. But after he was done writing The Lord of the Rings, he decided to turn back to the Silmarillion. And so this is a lot of the earlier drafts of the Silmarillion. These drafts are much closer to the published Silmarillion than those in the first 5 volumes of this series were. It also has way more than just the history of the Silmarillion. It has information on morality and the life cycle of the elves, which was really fascinating. It has rules and laws and customs among the elves, and a lot of it is really fascinating. Now, there were a lot of dry parts in this book. There were parts where I was kind of getting bored, but then once I sort of took a break and then went back into it, I was just so fascinated by all that I read about this, especially all the stuff about the life cycle of the elves and the laws and customs of the elves and the traditions of the elves, when they got married, like what age they got married at, their children, how the elves grow, all this stuff about the elves and the men, what's different between elves and men, what's similar about them. Are they a connected race, or are they a different race altogether? And all this stuff was just so fascinating to read. It did get a bit dry at parts, but it was just so fascinating, and every time I read a single word from this book, all of Tolkien's information on the elves and the men, how are they different, how are they similar, the laws and customs, all that, I'm just filled with awe at that all of this came from the mind of one man, that Tolkien created a world that feels so real and feels like that it could be an actual real world. Such a great book, fascinating. Took me a while to get through because there were some dry parts, and this isn't a book that you can speed read either. It does take a lot of time and thought, but you can only read you can only read a book for the first time once, so why rush? I really love this book, enjoyed it so much, so fascinating. And really gave me a deeper appreciation for what Tolkien wrote and how he created the world of Middle-earth. Because it's really incredible, all the stuff that Tolkien actually wrote about Middle-earth. All the lore, all the history, all the languages, everything. So fascinating, such a great book. 10 out of 10. And the second book, this book is actually a collection of short stories. It is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by A. Conan Doyle. This has 12 short stories in it, and I love this book so much. It was such a delightful read. There were some humorous bits, and I just love the way it's written as well. It's written in a way that sort of recalls Mark Twain's works that I've read and really enjoyed. The writing style and the way it was written kind of reminded me of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, but if they were British and not American, basically. I really enjoyed this so much. Each short story is so fascinating. I love the character of Sherlock Holmes, his incredible abilities of observation, and just the way he solves all the crimes. It's really fascinating seeing how first the person goes to Sherlock Holmes, tells them about the crime, and the process of finding out the crime, and then eventually actually finding out who did the crime, how they did it, and all that. Such a fascinating read. I think I need to read all of the Sherlock Holmes books that there are. I think there's like 50-something short stories and 7 or 8 novels, I believe. And I really want to read them all because this was so great. I also think I need to read a lot more mystery. My preferred genre is fantasy, and I haven't read a lot of mystery, but the mystery that I have read so far has been absolutely fantastic. There's the Flavia de Luce series, which I love. Those are mystery books. And then, of course, Sherlock Holmes. I think those are the only mystery books that I've ever read, but they've been fantastic. I need to read more mystery. This book I enjoyed so much, and I highly recommend every Sherlock Holmes book to everyone, even though I've only read 12 of the short stories out of 50-something short stories and 8 novels. I love this book so much, and I really, really want to read more Sherlock Holmes. And then the next book, 10 out of 10, by the way. The next book is The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. So, initially I went into this book thinking it was probably going to be a fine book, but not a great book, because I had to read it for school, and honestly, not a lot of the books that I have to read for school I actually enjoy. There was Little Britches, which was a book that I did not like at all in the slightest. But there was Where the Red Fern Grows is another book I read for school recently, and I really enjoyed that, which surprised me. So then, the first reason I thought I wasn't going to like this book that much is because I had to read it for school. And the second reason is that it was nonfiction, and I do not read nonfiction. The only nonfiction that fascinates me is astronomy and cytology. I'm not that into nonfiction at all. I have no desire to read it of my own accord, but I was so stunned by how much I enjoyed this book. This book is about a Christian woman called Corrie ten Boom. Her family hid Jews in their houses during World War II, and this book was so good. There were so many emotional bits as well when they were betrayed by a certain fellow, which I won't tell you about since that's a spoiler, and then the Nazis took them to the concentration camp. This book was so good, so fascinating, and really recalls to mind the verse in the Bible that's like, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, something along those lines. This book was so good because Corrie ten Boom and her family met so many trials. I have no idea how they somehow went through all of that, still sane. And I loved Corrie's sister Betsy as well, how when they go into that one cell, it's like all filled with fleas and stuff, and Betsy says, "Thank God for the fleas." And then there was that one Nazi soldier that really mistreated everyone, and then Corrie snuck a Bible into the concentration camp, and she was reading it all the time, and she remembered how God says to forgive your enemies as God forgave us, and so she forgave the soldier. That was such a great part. I'm almost speechless because this book was so good. I recommend it to anyone at all out there. If you're watching this right now, you absolutely need to read this book. For being nonfiction and for being a book I had to read for school, it was absolutely fantastic. 10 out of 10. And then the next one is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This is book 2 in his Wheel of Time fantasy series. This book I enjoyed a lot. Definitely better than the first book. Not that the first book was bad. The first book was still fantastic. Really enjoyed it. But in this one, Robert Jordan really expands on the world, on the magic, on his characters. We got to learn a lot more about the characters than we knew about in the first book. And I enjoyed this all the way through. The story had me hooked, and despite being a pretty long book, it's like 620-some pages, I flew through it because I was just hooked on the story, lost in the story. It was so good. Finished it in under a week, I believe. Such a great book. Although, the one thing that I did not like about this book at all was this one character that we meet named Selene, and I could not stand her. She was such an annoying character. And then she just, I don't want to give away any spoilers. I'll just say, like, she vanished. She didn't die, obviously, but she left the story. I'm going to say that. And she never came back. And there's something weird going on with her. I feel like she's hiding something, but it wasn't explained in this book, and it's probably explained in the rest of the series. So, kind of some mystery in there. I'm really intrigued about her character because we don't actually know a lot about her character. Besides that, I was super annoyed at her. Every time she spoke, it was so annoying. It was like a fly in my ear. She was such an annoying character that I did not like in the slightest. But besides that, this was a great book, and I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10. Especially the ending. The ending was so good as well. Next on this list is actually the first book in the Wheel of Time, which is The Eye of the World. I'm not going to say too much about it because I already did a review of it, which you can watch if you are interested in hearing my full thoughts. To put it shortly, I love this book. One or two things that were not great, like not bad, but not great. But still, this book was absolutely amazing. I loved it. I think The Wheel of Time is going to be one of my favorite series, actually. And I'm really looking forward to read the other 12 or 13 books in the series. 9 out of 10. The next book on this list is actually The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Going into this book, I expected it to be utterly fantastic, just amazing and incredible from all the stuff that I've heard about it. And it definitely was not a bad book. Like, it was a very well-written story. I enjoyed the story, but it was not near as good as I thought it was going to be. There was this one chapter that was talking about Dorian Gray's hobbies, all the things that he liked to do in his free time, rambled on for 20 pages, had nothing at all to do with the plot, and was never mentioned again. That kind of got on my nerves. Of course, it was only 20 pages, so... But this book wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It's definitely not a bad book. It is a good book, but it's not a great book. The ending was very impactful. There were a lot of moments in here that really surprised me. It was definitely a very well-written story, but I didn't enjoy it near as well as I thought it would be, near as well as I thought I would. Still enjoyable throughout. So, basically, this book, it's kind of complicated. It's about this young man named Dorian Gray who has an artist paint a picture of him for the first time, and he thinks that he's so beautiful, he's just so handsome, that he wishes that he'll never grow old, and the picture of him will grow old instead while he will stay young forever. Somehow this wish comes true, and the picture ages instead of him, and that was like the first thing that I didn't really understand. It was never explained at all throughout the entire book how Dorian's wish somehow came true, but I can let that go because that wasn't the point of this book. I just probably would have preferred it if how that happened had been explained, but that wasn't the point of the book, so I can see why it wasn't explained. I will say I probably would have enjoyed it better if the story weren't told from Dorian Gray's perspective, because Dorian Gray was easily the worst character in this book, and he was also the main character. He got on my nerves so much. Overall, the story was still enjoyable. I just don't think it deserves a lot of the praise that it gets, and that's just my opinion. You're free to have your own, but in my opinion, this book does not deserve all the praise that it gets. It's a good book, but not a great book, definitely. And I'll give this one a 7.5 out of 10. The next book that I read this past month in October, is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Book 20, Party Pooper, which came out this past month. I think I read it like the day it was released, and I don't have the physical book because I actually read the ebook. And I know Diary of a Wimpy Kid obviously isn't the greatest book, but it's hilarious. I like reading it when I just want something quick and easy and fun, when I want a little bit of light humor, and that's when I read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And this next Diary of a Wimpy Kid book I did enjoy quite a bit for the humor. As with all the other ones, it's not a book of the highest intellect. It's, intended for kids way below, a few years below my age, but I still enjoy them for the humor. And again, this book, definitely not as good as the earlier Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. I feel like since there's 20 Diary of a Wimpy Kid books now, the author is kind of running out of ideas. And I found this book to be, there were a lot of funny moments, but not near as hilarious and as enjoyable as a lot of the previous books in the Wimpy Kid series. I feel like after book 15 or 16, which I have read all of the Diary of Wimpy Kid books by now, but I feel like after Diary of Wimpy Kid book like 15 or 16, the author started to lose out of ideas because all the books after book 15 have not been very funny much. I mean, there's a lot of funny bits in them, but not near as hilarious as all the previous books, and that's basically how I felt about this book. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. So, those were all the books that I read in this past month, ranked from best to worst. Now I'll talk about a few books I'm currently reading. Starting with this book, I'm almost finished with Moby Dick by Herman Melville. I'm on chapter 110, page 637. I'm not going to do anything more about it because I want to do a review of this book when I'm finished reading it, which should be within the next couple of days. There's like a little under 100 pages left. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything much about it, just besides that, I'm almost done with it. It's taken me a while to get through it, too. It's taking me 2 or 3 months by now, I believe, but I'll say more in my review of it when I finish it. And then the next is a book I just started, which is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Or is it Fitzgerald? I've heard it pronounced both ways. Not much to say about it because I'm only on chapter 3, page 42. I'm like, maybe almost a quarter in, a little less than a quarter. So far, this book is interesting. Not a great book so far. It's just mildly interesting to me. Not much has really happened yet. Of course, I'm only on chapter 3. But so far, it's mildly interesting. Can't say much about it. So far, it's not bad or great, just mildly interesting. But we'll see what I think of it when I finish it. And the next book I'm actually rereading, you've heard me talk about this book way too much. This is my favorite book that I've ever read, The Children of Hurin by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm rereading it for like the 4th or 5th time, I think. I'm on chapter 6, page 98. Loving my reread of it. Each time I reread this book, it's just as good as the first time, or almost as good as the first time. This is my favorite book of all time. I love it. I'm rereading it. What else is there to say? 11 out of 10, of course. And the next book is the next book in the History of Middle-earth series, The War of the Jewels, Volume 11 in the History of Middle-earth. I'm on page 36 so far. This is really delving into more of the history of how Tolkien wrote the Silmarillion, and really fascinating so far. This one might take me 1 or 2 months to finish, I'm thinking. Really great book. It's probably going to be just as good as the rest of History of Middle-earth series so far. Everything I've read by Tolkien has been absolutely fantastic. I don't think there's a single thing that I've read from Tolkien that I have disliked at all in the slightest. Now I want to talk about 3 books that I plan to read this month, the first of which I don't have a physical copy because it's not released yet. It is Helmer and the Dragon Tomb by S.D. Smith. This is a prequel to the Green Ember series that S.D. Smith has been writing for the past year or so. There's also apparently a video game of this book, which I think is out now. I'm not sure. It's out. The video game is out either now or soon, but I pre-ordered a signed edition. It's coming on November 12th, I think it said. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. The next book, I forgot to bring it over here. Let me get it a minute. The next book is The Holy War by John Bunyan. I said last year that I was going... I said last month that I was going to start this book. Didn't get around to it. Hopefully I will start it this month, though, and, hopefully finish it as well, because I do want to do a book review of it when I'm done. I'm not reading this book for any other reason besides that John Bunyan also wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, and I absolutely love The Pilgrim's Progress. Such a great book. It was one of the first books I read, one of the first books that I was read to by my parents at a very young age, besides maybe Narnia, which I also love. So, yeah, we'll start and hopefully finish this book this month in November. And the next book, again, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to get to this book, because I have quite a bit to keep me busy this month, especially with school. School really gets in the way of everything, doesn't it? But it is I think you're gonna have to look at the spine. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens is an author I've been wanting to read for a very long time, and so I do want to start his works with Great Expectations. I've heard a lot that Great Expectations is a great place to start with Charles Dickens, and I'm trying to keep my expectations neutral for Charles Dickens because I've heard so much about him and he sounds like an author that I would absolutely love, so I'm kind of thinking like, oh my goodness, Charles Dickens is going to be my next favorite author. He's going to be better than Tolkien. I should probably lower my expectations a bit for it because I have great expectations for Charles Dickens, pun intended. But yeah, I'm trying to keep my expectations neutral or low because I try to go into books with no expectations at all, knowing absolutely nothing about them. And I don't know anything about Great Expectations besides the name of some of the characters. And so, yeah, I might start this book this month. Not promising anything because I'm really busy with school and with all my other reading and my writing, of course. So, might start this book this month. Not sure if I will, though. But I do want to start it this month, or at least start it soon. I don't know why I'm holding my mic up to my face. I had it clipped on my shirt before. Put it back on there. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Once I hit 5,000 subscribers, I will be reading to you a short story. Well, it's kind of longer than a short story. It's 30 pages and the print is pretty small. A short story called The Worst of Times, which is just a science fiction story that I randomly decided to write one day. And I decided, why not read it aloud for 5,000 subscribers? So please subscribe if you want to hear my science fiction short story novella thing. I'm currently working on editing it. Hopefully I'll get it finished soon in time for 5,000 subscribers. So please subscribe if you want to hear my science fiction short story. But anyway, that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Those were all the books I read in this past month, ranked from best to worst, all the books I'm currently reading, and some of the books I want to read this month. Thank you so much for watching this video, and for now, farewell.